Hey everybody, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about blocking. I just finished this shawl and I thought it would be a really good opportunity to show you how I block. I know many of you haven't tried blocking or just don't know how to get started, so I'm going to show you the steps that I follow when I block my projects. The shawl that I'm going to be blocking today is the Pecan Pie Wrap by Lisa Cook. It's made with wool trim yarn. Wool trim is a stranded cotton yarn. That means that it is several strands of thread held together. This is a 4-ply yarn, which works up just like a fingering weight. These stranded cotton yarns are really inexpensive ways to get nice gradients. Red Heart is releasing their own line of the stranded cotton gradients. I think that because of this type of yarn is going to become very popular, and if you're thinking about giving these yarns a try, you're going to need to know how to block your projects for the best results. Blocking is not difficult, it just requires a little bit of space and a little bit of time. So let's get started. To get started, you're going to need a towel. I keep a couple of bath towels in my craft room just for blocking. You're going to need pins. I prefer T-pins because they're a little bit stronger than the U-shaped pins, and I don't like the double point on a U-pin. T-pins come in a variety of sizes and colors. I prefer stainless steel to these colored pins because I use dark blocking mats and they're difficult to see. If you're going to use light colored mats, it won't matter. You may also want to add some soap. This is a rinseless soap by Soak. Soap is not required for blocking, but I have a tendency to drag my crochet projects with me everywhere I go. They go with me to work, they're in the car, they get dragged all around, and I really just like to wash them up a little bit, especially if I'm going to be giving them as gifts. If you don't want to use soap, you can use a little bit of vinegar, or you can just use plain water. The last thing you're going to need is a bowl of water. Temperature is very important when you're blocking, especially if you're blocking natural fibers like wool or alpaca. If your water is too warm, you're going to shock the fibers and they're going to felt. Felting is when your fibers mat together and sort of turn into felt. If that wasn't your goal, it's going to ruin your project. Now that we've gathered all our supplies together, let's get started. I'm going to add my soap to the room temperature water and just swirl it around a little bit. And then I just take my whole project and dunk it in the water. It's important to just gently press and try not to touch the project more than you have to. And then just leave it soak for about 10 to 15 minutes. All right, I am over on my blocking mats. These are anti-fatigue mats from Harbor Freight. They are pretty inexpensive. I have 12 of them down on the floor. They're really easy to take back up if you don't have a space where you can leave them out all the time. It's been about 15 minutes since I put this shawl in the water, and I am going to go ahead and squeeze out all the excess water and dry it in the towel and start blocking. So here we go. When you're blocking, it's important that you squeeze the water out and don't wring your project out. So once you've squeezed out as much water as you can move it to your towel. So I'm going to get this water out of the way. Okay. I like to arrange my project so there's as little overlap as possible so that it can dry the best I can get it to. All right, once you've got it laid out, you just start at one end and start rolling your towel up. Then you take your towel, and I roll it this way, and then just press. And it's sort of hard to get the water out. Honestly, sometimes I just use my knee and just sort of press as much water as you can out of the project. The more water that you get out of the project, the faster it's going to dry, and the easier it's going to be to work with. It's pretty hard to work and pull really wet fabric or really wet yarn. All right, so we've got that as dried out as it's going to get. And so we can just pick it up and start blocking. When I start blocking, I like to have the pattern handy just to refer to what shape it's actually supposed to be. This one is supposed to be a long rectangle, and at the end of each row, there is a point. So what I generally do is try and find my points, and I'll start by putting pins in them. So you just take a pin and stick it right into the project. And just stretch it into the shape that you want it to be. As you go, if you find that you have put pins in spots that you don't like them, you can just pull them back out and reshape it and move it. It's important to know that blocking is not permanent. After you wear a shawl a couple of times, you may have to rewash it and reblock it, but it'll never be quite as squished down as it was right after you made it. With that being said, blocking is not permanent, and if you don't like the way your project turned out after you block it, you can just re-wet it and reblock it. So really, you shouldn't be afraid at all to try out blocking a project. Okay, so I've started to make a little bit of progress, and you can see what's happening is that this is rounding out instead of being nice sharp corners. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pin and put it on the outside of the work and just push those corners in to where I want them to be. And so now I'm getting nice sharp edges, which is really what I want the project to look like. You can also see here that I have now stretched this too far. I'm just going to release that pin and move that a little bit. And it's bowing in along this edge. And so I'm just going to take a couple of extra pins and pull that edge out. And now this one's in a little bit too far. So I'm just going to pull it out a little bit more. When I block, I usually just turn on Netflix and sit and take my time. This is just a process that you just have to get used to and just sort of mess around with it until it's how you want your project to look. All right, so I'm about halfway through blocking, and you can really see the difference in the blocked portion versus the unblocked portion. The pattern is really starting to show up, and I'm really happy with how this is turning out. I should mention, if you don't have the space to block your entire project, you should look into steam blocking or spray blocking. Those would allow you to block a smaller portion of the project at a time. They also can be a little bit quicker because you're using less water and they dry a little bit faster. All right, now that I've got the whole shawl blocked, I usually like to stand up and just take a look and see if there's any spots that I don't like. It's really worth the time to move and remove and move again any spots that you don't like. You spent hours and hours working on a project, and finishing it right makes all the difference. Move your pins around if you don't like a spot. This was a really easy shawl to block because it's got nice sharp square corners. It was an easy shape. You might run into something curved, which takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort to get just right, but I promise it's worth it once you see the final product. Now, the last step is just to wait. All right, I'm back. It's been a whole day. My project is totally dry everywhere, and I'm ready to pull my pins out. So it's really just that easy. You just start pulling your pins out and just throw them back into your container. You'll see as I'm pulling my pins out, my project is not springing back a whole bunch. It's staying in roughly the same shape. If you find that your project is springing back a whole bunch, you may have blocked a little bit too aggressively. That's not a big problem. Just next time, maybe don't pull your yarn quite so tight. Just make sure you pull each of your pins out, and then you're all done. And that's all there is to blocking. As you can see, I've got the shawl on. It's laying very nicely. The pattern is open. You can see all the details in the stitches. It's grown in size, both in width and in length. Blocking provides all of these benefits, and you can use it to hide small mistakes. If I had missed a chain or missed a single crochet in this area, the rest of the stitches will stretch to make up for it. If I had added an extra chain or an extra stitch in here, they'll stretch a little bit less and hide it. As I was pulling the pins, I went ahead and counted them. I used 88 pins on this project. This is a nice rectangular project. If you're going to be doing a rounded project, you may need more pins. Pins are something you're going to use over and over again, so it's better to have too many than too few. Blocking is really a simple way to improve your project and to finish them off properly. I hope you'll give it a try on your next project. If you run into any problems or have any questions about blocking, leave them in the comments below and I will try and help you out. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to Experiments in Crafting so you get notifications about future crafting videos.